person on this audience our condolences for the war. Yeah? It killed in Lebanon by Israel. The challenges, what you've had to tackle, what people have had to tackle over the past year.
The freedom of speech during the war and fighting misinformation. Mm-hmm. The misinformation,
and this is the main source of the real information, and this goes to the citizens of Lebanon.
Dalia Grybauskaite is the former president of the Republic of Lithuania. And Vicky Price is the chief economic advisor at the Center for Economics and Research.
Trade fragmentation is to do with geostrategic competition between the United States, which is considered to be the hegemon power, and, of course, the emerging superpower, which is China. And as you can see, if you look at trade restrictions, for the past 2 years, you can see a lot of concentration in both the United States and China in terms of restrictive trade interventions. The number of protectionist measures, these are new measures, not cumulative. We had very few measures in the run-up to or before global financial crisis. Post-global financial crisis, protectionism has picked up. But in recent years, it's really gone through the roof. So it's up, relative to a decade or a decade and a half ago by 9 folds. These are the number of new trade protectionist measures. This is dramatic. If the current trend is sustained, it could actually reduce global GDP by as much as Germany and French economy combined. So we're talking about big numbers here. Friendshoring is a new trend on the back of this geostrategic competition between the United States and China. This is going to be increasingly more so going forward. So what does really, all these means for us, and what are we going to do about it? Well, Trump 2.0, version 2 of Trump, I think the risk is that there'll be more tariffs, not only against China, but also against other countries. That's what pre-election rhetoric, essentially suggests. If that is the case, it actually might mean higher inflation in the USA, but also higher, longer-term interest rates in the USA. This is bad news for emerging markets, for developing markets, for everyone. But there's also risk that will come indirectly from this policy, because China has massive capacity in almost every single manufacturing sector. And if China is faced with tariffs, it's highly unlikely that they would destroy the capacity. Instead, they will reroute their exports. And that means, indirectly, our markets are at huge risk. Plus, of course, that will also mean slower Chinese growth and slower global growth. So there you go. Slower growth means lower risk appetite for emerging markets. Higher US inflation, higher US yields means higher cost of funding globally. This cannot be good news. I've just covered this. The rerouting scenario is largely to do with the fact that China is global manufacturing based, accounting for over 30%. Well, so how does Turkey respond? Well, first of all, we're likely to be resilient to the current climate, the protectionist climate. Why? Because we have 54 free trade agreements, including, of course, a customs union with European Union. And it covers 62% of our exports. And we are in the process of also, we are currently negotiating comprehensive FTAs, free trade agreements, with GCC countries, with many other countries, Central Asia. So hopefully, over the next few years, about 3/4, of our exports will be covered by rule-based free trade agreements. If that's the case, it's highly likely that Turkey will be a lot more resilient than other relative open economies. So that's my first conclusion. Because, in fact, you could make an argument that Turkey could benefit from nearshoring and possibly friendshoring. Why? Because we're friends with Central Asia, we're friends with Middle East, we're friends with Balkans as well as EU because we have a customs union with EU. And of course we're friends also with North Africa, Africa in general.